Hey, how are you doing, girl? Today is the 24th of June, 2019, and I wanted to take a moment out today and talk a little bit about state control. And in particular, I'm talking about emotional state control. And in recent weeks, I have been recognizing the critical importance, the absolutely critical importance of maintaining emotional state control. Now, I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about when I say this, but um, you can look it up in any psychological text. Um, Most of them talk about maintaining states. And a good example is actors. Actors, when they act out a role in a movie or on TV, they put themselves in a certain state, whatever the necessary state is for their acting. Maybe it's a sad state, a happy state. Maybe they're in an accepting state. Maybe if they're comedians, they'd be in a comedic state. And um, these states, they're almost like moods, but I wouldn't call them a mood. For me, a state is something slightly different. But a state is like it's like it's like the part of your emotional condition that you have volitional control over. And it's not it's sort of like an overlay on top of the state you're already in naturally. But it's a little bit more energetic, a little bit more controlled. In fact, I think if you're just getting into state, to an outside observer, it might look a little forced. And that is until you can get all of your nonverbal behaviors sort of coordinated. And that might take some time. So, but maintaining your state is important. Here's an example. Let's say people change their states all the time when they move into different contexts. Say I'm at work. I'm in a professional state. I put myself in a professional state at work, and everybody else does this. I'm at home. I'm in a state, let's say in a relaxed state with my romantic partner or my family. Or when I'm with friends and we're at a concert, I'm in a different state. So I put myself in different states according to different contexts, and it's sort of like energy that we sort of inject into our personality. Anyway, we have control over the states that we're in, just like we can control the way we are, the way we sort of show up in any situation. We have relative control of that. And, there's a lot of different ways to get into state. Actors have different methods that they use to get into state. Maybe they will visualize a memory. I mean, maybe they'll visualize like a new they'll visualize some kind of imagery, or they'll be receptive to memories of some of their childhood memories that occurred in similar circumstances to the context in which they're acting. There's a lot of ways to get into state, but I'm recognizing more and more that state is really important, mainly for this reason. It's sort of determined. Well, first of all, there's two things that we can control in our lives. Number one, we can control our interpretations, and number two, we can control our reactions. Those are the things that we have control over. This goes back to Stoicism, and that distinction between what we can and can't control, and paying attention to what we can control. Now, there's a lot that we can't control in our lives as human beings. We just don't have control over external events. We don't have control over other people's decisions. We don't have control over other people's thoughts. We have we have some control over our bodies, but much of our bodies are pretty automatic. I mean, there are parts of our bodies that we can control. For example, watch my hand. See, I have physical control over the motion of my fingers. Now, there are some aspects of my fingers that I do not have control over. I do not have control over the circulation in my pinky finger, for example. I don't have control over pain receptors and whether they get activated or not. So I might have arthritis and I might have continuous pain. That's not under my control. But some things are under my control, and at least for now, I have got very good control of my of each of my fingers and that movement. So knowing this, now there are things that I can control in my mind too. Like I control my interpretations. I can control my beliefs. And how much control do I have over my interpretations and beliefs? I have considerable control. There's almost infinite control over my beliefs. I mean, there are people who believe that things that don't exist. You know, like there are people who believe that unicorns exist. People who believe that, I don't know, Santa Claus exists, right? So we have a lot of control over our beliefs. We have a lot of control over our interpretations. For example, if a friend performs an action, let's say they give me a present, maybe they give me a kiss. Let's say they give me a kiss. I can interpret that kiss in a lot of different ways. In the Christian tradition, there's such a thing as the kiss of death, right? Which is a kind of kiss that an enemy gives you. There's also friendly kisses, like the French might kiss both of your cheeks on either side before a conversation, in tradition, as part of their tradition, their cultural tradition. And then there are romantic kisses. And there are also platonic kisses. So there's all kinds of kisses, all kinds of hugs. You can interpret even statements to mean one thing or another. And those things could be completely opposite depending on your definitions of the words and who's saying those words, right? So if a homeless person came up to me and said, Miguel, let's say a homeless person came up to me and said something. I might just choose to discount what they said just on the basis that person doesn't know me or isn't doing well himself, or maybe there are certain cues I'm picking up on that are telling me that he's not in his right mind, things like that. So I can dismiss people's statements. That's the power of interpretation. It's the power of belief. And I have wide latitude over whether I believe what anybody says. I have wide latitude over whether I believe my own beliefs in my head, those automatic thoughts that pop up. I might have an automatic thought, and if I can choose, I can choose how I view that automatic thought. Do I take the automatic thought seriously just because it shows up? It has like a grain of truth in it, or do I dismiss it altogether? The human brain is flawed. It doesn't always come up with 100% accurate and reliable thinking and beliefs, and those beliefs can be dismissed at any time. So anyway, in that context, I'm talking about state control and how important it is. So what I'm suggesting is that you have control over your states. You have good control over your states. If you wanted to be extroverted or introverted at any time, chances are you could make it happen. And that is all about your power of state control. Okay, so why is it so important? State control is important, I'm recognizing, is because I don't know if you're familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. Grinder and Bandler had this theory. A long time ago. But one of their theories, one of the concepts in their NLP theory had to do with anchors. Essentially anchors are just associations, right? We all get conditioned by our environment. And I am becoming more and more convinced that the anchors in our environment, it's like these are stimulus response type trainings that our nervous system acquires as we live out our lives. These anchors, I think depending on the state we're in, we become more or less resistant to anchors. Or how should I say, depending on the state we're in, we become more or less influenced by anchors in our environment that we have laid down already. So this is one thing I'm learning a lot. I'm sort of recognizing this, like, wow. See, I'm asking myself, what is the source of these automatic thoughts? There are these automatic thoughts that pop up. Who knows when they pop up or why they pop up? Maybe it's the unconscious. I happen to think that maybe automatic thoughts are they can be triggered by a lot of things. Anchors can be triggered in a lot of ways. Anchors can be triggered through your sort of external environment. You come upon visually or through a scent or through a sound or noise, you come across an association. And, your mind travels to that association quickly, in a flash. And so it might trigger an automatic thought to pop up and this automatic thought can be, a good memory, or it could be an unpleasant memory. It could be anything. And, we're just memory machines, meaning machines. Anyway, my point here, I really want to get this point, is that so that's how we come across anchors in our external environment. We also come across anchors in our internal environment. For example, when we're just daydreaming, say, and we're not really paying attention to our external sensations or external perceptions, we're focused on our mind and the ideas in it, and we're sort of hopping from thought to thought within our mind. We are sort of in our visual images, and in our mind's eye, and our mind's ear, and in our mind's nose. We're coming across memories of anchors. So there are just two ways that we can come across anchors: through our external environment or through our internal environment. And, I don't know if you've ever had this idea where you've had a thought that sort of transports you into another thought, and then this thought transports you into yet another thought. It's like hyperlinks, but in your mind as you move from thought to thought. And you sort of become captivated by these thoughts when you are involved in this thinking. So here's my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that anchors have more or less influence on you depending on what state you're in. And this is the critical idea. This is why it's so important for you to control your state. Because if you're in a good mood and you run across an anchor that will make you afraid, it's almost like you've got momentum. In the state you're building this momentum forward, in the state that you're building, and this idea, whether it's external or internal idea, this anchor, whether external or internal, you'll become less. There's something, if the state is sort of outside of the anchor, you'll be less influenced by the anchor, which is amazing to me. And if you're in a certain state and you come across an anchor that's related to that state, then you'll have your brain will have more of an affinity for that anchor. And this is a powerful idea, because if you want to be in a mood, maintain a state, it's important for you to add energy to the state and build the state up so that you can bypass these anchors. You've got, every time you feel bad, every idea you feel bad, you're sort of making connections, right? You're making associations between your thoughts and anchors. And if you feel bad, chances are you're in a pretty bad mood or a bad state. They are very similar to one another. And I don't know, you just become more liable to be influenced by the anchors in this state than if you were in a different state. Anyway, it's something I'm just recognizing right now. And I'm also recognizing just how important it is to just for maintaining a person's happiness. It is of utmost importance that you practice state control and that you do a good job of maintaining your states throughout the day, because it'll have an impact on your relationships. It'll have an impact on your work. It'll have an impact on your happiness level. What you want to do is you want to be, you want positive anchors to be influencing you all the time. And you want to have the negative anchors to have less influence on you. And here's the thing. Here's why I think it's important. Believe it or not, I think there's these unstated cultural ideas about what's authentic, about authenticity that's happening right now. It's like people are dismissing cultural terms. There's like a dismissal of how inauthentic it might be to control your state. In fact, I think that I might even label it. I might call it like what I'd call the natural state. You know, there are people who just don't want to put energy into their states, don't put thought into their states that they're in. And because they think it's more authentic, they think it's more real. They want a more genuine, they're seeking sort of more genuineness, sort of a more genuine response in the world. You know, they have a feeling that it's more true, right? That somehow the state that if I do nothing to control my environment, that is, I watch TV, play video games, who knows, if I put very little energy into controlling my external environment, and I put very little energy into controlling my state, then somehow that's like the natural state, and that's like the ideal state to be in for the most authentic, genuine, true experiences. And I reject that idea. I think the idea is kind of lazy. I think it's a lazy idea. And the fact is, look, good relationships, a good relationship with self, takes energy. It takes time. It takes focus. It's something you build and design. It's something you plan. A thoughtful life is something that takes energy. For things to work well in your life, it takes effort. It's effortful. Because, look, the things in reality degenerate. The things in the universe, they fall away. Entropy is a thing. Things need maintenance, and your state needs maintenance. Your moods need maintenance, and it's important that you put energy into them. That you put energy into sort of controlling your inputs, right? Your data inputs, the media that you're sort of receiving and connecting to. It's really important that you control that. It's sort of like our food environment. There's a lot of people who are just eating anything, right? The standard American diet, the SAD diet. Well, that's a great sort of low energy plan to deal with your physical health, and it doesn't work. What works better is just putting a little bit of time and energy into controlling your diet and exercise. And if you can do that, your life turns out better. And, there's a big movement, what I'd call sort of in the food environment. There are people who are just all about the flavor and about the taste and about pleasure, right? And it's not about pleasure that could be. It's like pleasure that was. It's like, I don't know. It can be somewhat destructive. If you look at all the chefs on TV, many of them are overweight. The celebrity chefs. you know, they're cooking food that is essentially unhealthy. And, it's unfortunate, but it doesn't have to be that way. And the same is true for psychological health. Whatever is true for physical health, yeah, there's an analog to psychological health as well. So I actually think that it's important for people to sort of act according to their values, act according to the things that are important to them. And if sort of thinking clearly and living a happy life, uh, a life of well-being and mental health is important to them, then they'll put energy into state control, and they'll put energy into controlling the media that they consume. And I feel that way when it comes to my food diet, and I feel that way when it comes to my mental diet as well. And I think state control is really an important part of maintaining a positive, effective, skillful life. Yeah, absolutely. It's as essential as like meal planning. It's essentially, it's state control is basically about dietary control, except for the mind. And so anyway, that's why I think it's really important. State control is one of the most important things. So, Emily, if I could give you some advice, it would be to manage your states as best you can. What is the wonderful thing about it being in a happy state and being and sort of putting that energy into your mental state? Well, there's a lot of benefits to it. Basically, you become empowered. You become sort of, there's a lot of benefits to being in that state and living in that state. First of all, you're not dependent on other people for your happiness. You're not dependent on your life situation for your happiness. Whether you're rich or poor, doesn't matter. If you can maintain state control, it just doesn't matter. If you're in good health or bad health, doesn't matter. If you've got state control, you can live a happy, fulfilled life nonetheless. And so that's why it's such a powerful tool. And what's also great about state control is it'll cut down on automatic negative thoughts. ANTs are ants, is what some people in cognitive behavioral therapy call them. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to get that point across. I think this is on a scale from 1 to 10, I think state control and learning how to do it is a 10 on the scale for maintaining a person's well-being. It is essential because it'll make sure that your automatic thought thinking is not as negative as it could be. It'll just make your life easier, and all it takes is a little bit of energy, a little bit of thought. And when you fall out of state, it's easy to discover when you fall out of state. If you overhear in your mind statements that are not necessarily cohering with a positive state, then that is a yellow flag for you to consider whether you have fallen out of state or not. Yeah, and that's actually quite easy because, when you receive information about you having negative thoughts, that is essentially emotional pain. And so, isn't it wonderful that you've got this lightning fast emotional system to give you information about whether you've fallen out of state or not? Anyway, that's my advice. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day today. Today's going to be an abbreviated message because I've got a lot of things to do. I'm really looking forward to going camping next week. And all this week, I'm going to be preparing for that trip to Santa Cruz. So I'll talk to you later, girl. Bye-bye. I love you.